Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the roots of one of the world's greatest epics, the Mahabharata. We're going to trace the chain of events that made its massive, catastrophic war pretty much inevitable.
So why did the Great War of the Mahabharata actually happen? Well, the answer isn't simple. It's not just one thing. It's this incredible chain reaction, starting with the gods, mixing in some very human desires, and topped off with some really fateful curses. All of this just made the war unavoidable. All right, let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll follow the story in 5 key steps. First, the divine plan for the war. Then, we'll see how one single vow created a huge crisis. After that, we'll look at how the whole Kuru dynasty was on the verge of ending. Then, an unconventional solution pops up. And finally, we'll see how a few nasty curses sealed the deal.
All right, first up, the divine plan for war. You might think a story about a great war starts with kings or soldiers, right? Nope. This one starts with the gods, and it starts because planet Earth was literally groaning under the weight of evil and chaos.
So the story goes that Mother Earth herself just couldn't take it anymore. She was so overburdened by all the corruption, the evil kings, and just widespread wickedness that she went straight to the top, to the creator god Brahma. She basically pleaded with him, "You've got to do something to restore the balance or I'm going to be crushed."
And this is the key takeaway here. This force they were fighting is called a dharma. It's this idea of unrighteousness, chaos, anything that goes against cosmic law. The gods saw this rise in adharma as a massive threat to the entire universe. So the war wasn't a human idea at all. It was cooked up in the heavens. Brahma went to Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, and Vishnu agreed it was time for a great cleansing. And he said he himself would be born on Earth to make sure events led to one final epic battle. So how did they pull this off? Well, Brahma basically ordered a whole host of gods, celestial beings, even some demons, to go down to Earth and be born as humans. And if you look at the major players in the story, I'm talking Bhishma, Karna, the Pandavas, they weren't just men. They were all incarnations of these divine beings. They were sent to Earth with a job to do, with pre-written roles in this giant cosmic play that was meant to end the age.
Okay, so let's leave the gods for a minute and come down to Earth. We're going to see how the very first and maybe the most important domino falls. And it all starts with the king of Hastinapur, a man named Shantanu, a guy whose heart, as we'll see, would lead his kingdom into trouble not once, but twice.
Shantanu's story is a wild one. It kicks off with this really tragic marriage to the river goddess Ganga. She agrees to marry him, but makes him promise one thing: never, ever question what she does. But she then gives birth to their first 7 sons and drowns every single one of them. I mean, can you imagine? Shantanu finally can't take it anymore and stops her from drowning the 8th. Well, that breaks the deal. Ganga leaves, taking their surviving son, Devavrata, with her. Fast forward a bunch of years, she comes back and presents Shantanu with his son, who is now this incredible, perfect warrior prince and heir to the throne. You'd think, great, happy ending? But nope. Just as things are looking up, Shantanu falls in love all over again, this time with a fisherwoman named Satyavati.
So Shantanu goes to Satyavati's father to ask for her hand in marriage, and the fisherman king hits him with this absolute bombshell of a condition. He says, "Sure, you can marry my daughter, but her son has to be the one to inherit the throne, not your current son, Devavrata." Shantanu is just crushed. How could he possibly disinherit his perfect, godlike son? It's an impossible choice. He goes back to his palace completely heartbroken. And his son, Prince Devavrata, sees his father in this state of total misery and decides, okay, I've got to fix this.
So Devavrata goes to the fisherman king himself and makes this incredible promise. He renounces his own claim to the throne, but that's still not good enough for the king. He's worried, right? He says, well, what about your future children? They might come along and challenge my grandson for the throne. And this is the moment. To fulfill his duty, his dharma to his father, Devavrata makes a vow so extreme, so terrifying, that it literally changes his life and the future of his entire family forever.
And in that exact moment, he wasn't Devavrata anymore. The gods themselves were watching this whole thing unfold. They were so blown away by his sacrifice that they rained flowers down from the heavens and gave him a new name, Bhishma, which means he of the terrible vow. And his father, Shantanu, just completely overwhelmed with gratitude, gave him this incredible gift, a boon. Bhishma would now have the power to choose the exact moment of his own death.
So, problem solved, right? Shantanu gets to marry Satyavati, everyone's happy. And Bhishma's vow, it seems like the perfect solution. But what he's actually done in trying to make his dad happy is plant a ticking time bomb right in the middle of the kingdom. He's created a succession crisis that is just waiting to go off.
And here's where it all goes wrong. Look at this timeline. It's a total catastrophe, and it's a direct result of Bhishma sticking to his vow, to his personal dharma. Shantanu dies. Then, just a few years later, Satyavata's older son, Chitrangada, is killed in a battle. And not long after that, the younger son, Vichitavirya, dies of a disease, with no heir. So in the span of about 10 years, both of the sons who were supposed to be king are dead, and Bhishma, the strongest guy around, can't do anything because he's sworn to be celibate. The Kuru dynasty, this powerful line of kings, was suddenly facing total extinction.
At this point, Queen Satyavati is panicking. She goes to Bhishma and begs him, "Please, just break your vow this one time. Your duty to the kingdom, your dharma to save the family line, is more important than your personal promise." But Bhishma refuses. He's a man of his word. His vow is absolute. So with no other options, Satyavati is forced to play a card she's been holding for decades, a massive secret.
Turns out, years before she ever met Shantanu, Satyavati had a son with a great sage named Parashara. And this son is none other than Vyasa, a super powerful ascetic. So Satyavati summons him, and he agrees to help save the dynasty using an ancient custom called Niyoga. But he has one very important warning. He says, "Listen, I've been meditating in the forest for years. I look terrifying. The two queens, the widows of your son, they have to meet me without any fear. If they get scared, there will be consequences." And well, they don't listen. The first queen, Ambika, is so scared when she sees Vyasa that she squeezes her eyes shut. The result? Her son, Dhritarashtra, is born blind. The second queen, Ambalika, she turns white as a sheet with fear. Her son, Pandu, is born pale and sickly. The only one who isn't afraid is a maid who is sent in the queen's place, and her son, Vidura, is born healthy and wise. So yeah, the solution kind of works, but it's a mess. The dynasty is saved, but the new heirs are flawed. Dhritarashtra is the oldest, but because he's blind, he can't be king. The throne has to go to his younger, weaker brother, Pandu. You can already see the resentment building, can't you?
Okay, so now we have our curses and their consequences. The line of kings is back, but it's fragile, you know? Dhritarashtra, the blind brother, is sidelined, and his younger brother Pandu becomes king. But Pandu's reign, and his chance to have a legitimate heir, is about to come to a crashing halt, all because of one really bad decision on a hunting trip.
While he's out hunting, King Pandu sees two deer mating, and, without thinking, shoots them with an arrow. This was a huge mistake. As they're dying, the deer transform. It turns out it wasn't two animals. It was the great sage Yama and his wife. And with his last breath, the sage, absolutely furious at being killed in such a private and sacred moment, lays a devastating curse on the king.
He says, "Because you killed me in a moment of passion, you will die in the exact same way. The very second you embrace your wife with desire, you will die." And boom, that's it. That's the final domino. The king of Hastinapur, the only person who can produce a clear, legitimate heir, is now cursed. He literally can't have children without dying. The exact crisis Bhishma tried to prevent all those years ago is back, and this time, it's way more complicated.
So that leaves us with this massive question, right? Without an heir, what happens to the Kuru dynasty now? You've got the rightful king who can't have kids. You've got his blind older brother just waiting for his chance. The kingdom has no clear future. The god's plan is rolling along. The humans are all trapped by their own promises and curses. And the seeds of a massive, terrible war have now been planted. And there's no turning back.